Thornton Gainsborough Clarke tragically died on July 19, 1916 in the Battle of Fromelles, along with thousands of fellow British and Australian soldiers.
These soldiers were not just men fighting in a war, and Thornton, along with many others, was a son, a husband and a father, as well as being a renowned VFL player.
For his courage, he will never be forgotten, and he will always be remembered for the man he was.
Thornton Gainsborough Clarke was born on the 27th of November 1891 in Melbourne, Victoria. His parents were Arthur and Rebecca Ann Clarke, who he lived with in Kramer Street, Preston, up until his enlistment for Gallipoli on the 7th of July 1915. Prior to his involvement in both Gallipoli and Fromelles, Clarke was able to complete his apprenticeship as an electrical engineer, working at the Weymouth Electric Works.
During 1911, as a 19-year-old, Thornton became the 178th member of the Fitzroy football team in VFL, the Victorian Football League, led by Captain Harold McLennan and coached by Jeff Moriarty. The season of 1911, the only year he professionally played, the team won 4 games, lost 3, and drew 1. During his time in a team, he would have developed skills that were beneficial for his service on the battlefield in both Gallipoli and Fromelles, such as cooperation and fair play. The 9th of March 1916 edition of the Essendon Gazette reported that a letter written by Thornton on his way to Egypt for training stated that he
expects his captainship to extend to Egypt and beyond,
and that he
hopes to get a few good games in.
In fact, he was appointed captain of the 8th Battalion's football team at Gallipoli and became known as a skilled goal kicker. At the end of his message, he wished well on his Essendon friends. This was one of the last messages that can be found from him.
On the 1st of April, 25 days before he fought in Gallipoli, it was announced in the local newspaper that Thornton Gainsborough Clarke and Anne Muriel Walker were engaged, based on the fact that she had their son, Thornton Vernon Clarke, subsequently to his enlistment. It is possible that he may not have had the opportunity to see his newborn son before his embarkment to Gallipoli, and perhaps would have only read about him in a letter.
Clarke was faithful to the Methodist religion, in which he dedicated practice to living out the values and beliefs of the Bible and this religion. Back when he lived in Victoria, he attended a parish in Essendon, a nearby town just 10 kilometres away. The core beliefs of this religion include creating open hearts, open minds, and open doors through active engagement in the world, which may have been a factor in his choice to enlist. Like many of the survivors from Gallipoli, Clarke was recruited to serve Australia, Britain and France in the Battle of Fromelles during 1916 alongside new soldiers who had also enlisted to serve their country. On the 15th of September in 1915, Thornton embarked on the SS Macquarie to France.
Thornton Gainsborough Clarke had survived the unfortunate circumstances in Gallipoli to then fight in a poorly planned battle that took place on Wednesday, the 19th of July, 1916. He fought with the 5th Division in the Battle of Fromelles, along with the 61st Division and 11 other Australian and British units. The Battle of Fromelles was the first trench warfare that Thornton Gainsborough Clarke had fought in.
The battle commenced at 6 p.m. It was a summer evening and it had rained the night before, so the fields were muddy. The 5th Division of the Australian soldiers travelled through no man's land to cross the German front line due north of the Sugarloaf. The first wave of Australian soldiers were tragically slaughtered within 15 minutes. Nevertheless, the second wave of Australian soldiers courageously attempted to mount another attack. However, the message to cancel the assault was unfortunately too late, meaning the battle ended with catastrophic results.
The Battle of Fromelles resulted in a plethora of individual impacts on the soldiers. Many of these impacts significantly affected daily life and not only influenced the way that they personally lived, but also the way they interacted with others and the environment. Some of the commonly found outcomes of the battle were loss of limbs, partial or full deafness, infection, and shell shock. The battlefield was not only full of known dangerous catalysts, such as bombs and guns, but normally harmless weapons, such as the damp and mud. Bacteria was easily transferable, and was one of the main killers other than the enemy. Wounds were commonly treated with dirty hands, for time, efficiency, and provision's sake, and flesh wounds often got infected with many diseases. Clarke would not have had to live with any of these long-term physical and psychological effects from war due to the fact that he was reportedly killed instantly after being shot in the temple. However, he would still have been prone to many of these impacts on the battlefield before his life was taken.
Fromelles was a poorly planned battle. The days leading up to Wednesday the 19th had been rainy, resulting in muddy battlefields. The battle, known to some of the soldiers as the Fleury stunt, was a plan to weaken and distract the German defences from the Battle of the Somme, an offensive just 80 kilometres away that was faltering and suspected to end. The Battle of Fromelles did not even get to start before it began to go wrong. Not only did the Germans have the upper hand in location and vantage point, they also had double the number of soldiers and a suspicion of attack being mounted.
The warfare was mainly behind breastworks, temporary fortifications to protect the soldiers at standing height, and though there were some trenches, it was mostly wooden structures. The battle was mainly planned to be an artillery attack, but after a delivery of trench helmets just 5 days before the battle, infantry waves were also incorporated into the plans. There were many weapons, even though technology was not very advanced.
Both sides used machine guns, rifles with bayonet attachments, hand grenades, shells, and heavy artillery guns. Many trial weapons were developed or invented, such as the use of toxic gas or Mills bombs. There are suspected to have also been around 5 planes involved, explaining how the aerial photos before the battle were taken. Communication trenches had been attempted, but were given up on after many targeted attacks.
By 8 a.m. on the 20th of July 1916, Australians suffered 5,533 casualties, almost 2,000 killed, and 1,299 of them declared missing in action, including Thornton. Every Australian that had breached the German side was forced to retreat. The battle had failed. Every life was irreplaceable, and though lost, they must never be forgotten.
Thornton was awarded 3 medals for his courage and perseverance throughout his time serving in war. He received the Victory Medal for his service in war in the period between 1914 and 1918. It was also known as the Allied Medal, and the rainbow-coloured ribbon represents the spectrum of all the flags of the Allied nations to represent their unity. Also for his service in this time period, he was awarded the British War Medal for his service overseas. The last medal he was awarded was the 1914 to 1915 Star, which was issued to him for his service through a range of theatres of war across the globe between 1914 to 1915.
Thornton Gainsborough Clarke passed away in no man's land, where VC Corner Memorial now lies. His service number was 2830, and his rank was promoted to corporal on the 5th of May 1916. Clarke was reported missing in action on the 28th of July 1916, and then declared killed in action by the Court of Inquiry on the 4th of August 1916. In a letter from a major officer to Clarke's wife Anne, he states that
an intensive search is now being made on all battlefields with a view on locating unregistered graves.
And the letter also states that
at the conclusion of the search, it is proposed to erect a suitable memorial in each area bearing the names of all whose graves are unlocated.
Thornton Gainsborough Clarke died in no man's land and is believed to be buried in the mass grave which is located in the now Rue de Bois Cemetery, also known to soldiers as Rifle Villa. Rue de Bois is in the neighbouring town of Fleury, approximately 1 kilometre away from the Australian front line. Along with his fellow comrades' names, his is inscribed on the wall of VC Corner so that he will always be remembered.
16th of October 1916, Thornton's father, Arthur Clarke, wrote to Miss Vera Deacon, who was the head of the Inquiry Bureau of Missing Soldiers. He said,
the last letter we received from him was written on board a transport approaching Marseille on the 25th of June.
The Defence Department notified his wife, he married at the time of his enlistment, that he was missing on the 19th of July.
We afterwards received a service card bearing, strange to say, the very date, July 19, 1916, but it had no whereabouts on it. No further news has come to hand.
In Clarke's last will, he declares that
all of my real and personal estate, whatsoever and wheresoever, will be unto my wife, Anne Muriel Clarke, for her own use and benefit absolutely, and I appoint her sole executrix of this my will.
Thornton's sister and brother-in-law left a statement in memory of him. They mentioned that
he was a much-loved brother who gave his life for all of us, aged 24 years, a young life nobly and well ended.
Thornton Gainsborough Clarke was an undoubtedly courageous and heroic soldier who served in both Gallipoli and the Battle of Fromelles.
He was loved by many for his cooperation, determination, and constant dedication to being active in our world and its conflict.
Lest we forget.